He lied about a $1 stock, turned it into millions, and when it finally caught up to him, he served 22 months in prison. Not 22 years, not decades, 22 months. Then Hollywood turned his crimes into a blockbuster. Audiences laughed, critics applauded, and the man who scammed thousands walked back into the spotlight, richer than before. This is not a story about intelligence, it's not about luck, and it's definitely not about hard work. This is the story of Jordan Belfort, how he learned to sell illusion, how America rewarded it, and why the system that enabled him still exists. Because if this feels uncomfortable already, it should. Queens, New York, 1962. A working-class Jewish neighborhood where ambition usually came with limits. Decent job, stable life. Nothing flashy. Jordan Belfort had no interest in limits. At 16 years old, he was already testing something important. Not products, but people. Selling Italian ices on the beach. 2-for-1 deals. Referral pressure. Scarcity before he even knew the word. By the end of one summer, he made $20,000. Adjusted for inflation, that's over $50,000 today. Most teenagers would have spent it. Jordan enrolled in dental school. Day one, the dean stood up and said, "If you're here to get rich, you chose the wrong profession." Jordan stood up, nodded, walked out. Not dramatic, just decisive, because for him, income mattered more than respectability. If you think this is where the story turns inspirational, it doesn't. After college, Jordan tried entrepreneurship, door-to-door meat and seafood sales. No trucks, no storage, no logistics, just confidence, pressure, and promises. It worked, briefly, $100,000 per month in sales. Then reality arrived. Spoiled inventory, missed deliveries, unpaid invoices. The business collapsed fast. But Jordan didn't see failure. He saw a pattern. The product didn't matter. He could sell anything. Meat, services, ideas, confidence, dreams. All he needed now was a place where selling words paid better than selling reality. That place was Wall Street. If you're already seeing where this is headed, like the video. It tells the algorithm this story matters. Jordan landed an entry-level job at LF Rothschild, a legitimate brokerage firm. This was the 1980s. Suits, bonuses, cocaine in bathroom stalls. Here, Jordan learned the most dangerous lesson of all. Markets move on emotion, not math. But in October 1987, everything collapsed. Black Monday. Markets crashed over 20% in a single day. Phones went silent, jobs vanished. Jordan was fired. Others panicked. Jordan adapted. Because what he discovered next made him rich and destroyed thousands of lives. Subscribe to Capital Misfires if you want the full breakdown, not the movie version, the math version. Most people fail in retreat. Jordan failed in recalibrated. Not morally, strategically. He didn't ask what went wrong. He asked, where are the rules weakest? Jordan finds the loophole Wall Street didn't want you to notice. Penny stocks, 50% commissions, and a phone call that turns lies into money. And once he crosses that line, there's no coming back. Jordan Belfort didn't reinvent fraud. He optimized it. What he discovered wasn't a new scam. It was a loophole hiding in plain sight, ignored by serious investors, and quietly tolerated by regulators. And it paid 10 times faster than honest work ever could. After Black Monday, Jordan stumbled on something Wall Street barely acknowledged. Penny stocks. Tiny companies, thinly traded, barely regulated. But here was the magic number. 50% commissions. Not 5%, not 10, 50. Sell a $1 stock, you pocket 50 cents. Same phone call, same pitch, same pressure. 10 times the reward. Jordan didn't need a new skill set, just a phone and someone who didn't know better. So he called. "Hello, Mr. Michaels. I'm calling with an opportunity that hasn't hit the mainstream yet." The script was never about facts. It was about urgency. Tiny company, ground floor, pre-IPO energy. Smart money language. He wasn't selling businesses. He was selling timing. And it worked. One call turned into $4,000. 10 calls into 40,000. Hundreds of calls into a system. No compliance department, no oversight, no breaks. just adrenaline and commissions. Jordan had found his edge. This is where most people still misunderstand the story. Jordan didn't wake up wanting to scam retirees. He woke up wanting asymmetric upside, low risk to him, high consequences for everyone else, and Wall Street quietly allowed that math. By 1989, Jordan wasn't alone. Enter Danny Porish, loud, chaotic, relentless, not polished, not trained, but dangerous on the phone. Together, they built something that sounded prestigious, Stratton Oakmont. The name suggested legacy, wood-paneled offices, respectability. The reality? A strip mall boiler room. Flickering lights, mismatched desks, zero meaningful regulation. Jordan didn't hire analysts, he hired hunger. Bartenders, dropouts, neighborhood hustlers, people who didn't ask questions because questions slow down commissions. If you're starting to see how this system scales, comment money below. It helps this reach people who were never taught this side of money. Jordan trained them with something he called straight-line persuasion. One path, no detours, no pauses. Objections weren't answered, they were overrun. Confusion wasn't clarified, it was reframed as opportunity. You don't need to understand the company, you just need to understand the upside. That line alone closed millions. And here's the part Hollywood barely touches. They didn't target the wealthy, they targeted the forgotten. Retirees, veterans, working families, people who trusted a confident voice more than a prospectus. They sold hope, wrapped in urgency, dressed as certainty. First with fake companies, then with real ones. They'd buy massive blocks of shares cheap, hype them relentlessly, inflate demand, and dump everything at the top. Prices crashed, investors were wiped out. At Stratton Oakmont, it wasn't called fraud, it was called Tuesday. This is where the story turns from hustle to harm, because next, we break down how this operation exploded into a full-blown financial cult and why no one stopped it. If a system rewards selling dreams more than delivering value, how long before someone builds an empire on illusion? By the early 1990s, Stratton Oakmont wasn't just profitable, it was untouchable, loud, reckless, and drowning in money. And Jordan Belfort was no longer a salesman, he was a leader people worshipped. That's when everything spiraled. Stratton Oakmont didn't fall apart quietly, it rotted from the inside, loudly, with money, drugs, and applause covering the cracks. By the early 1990s, this wasn't a brokerage anymore, it was a cult with a payroll. And Jordan Belfort was its prophet. Walk into Stratton Oakmont at its peak, and you didn't see finance, you saw excess. Phones screaming, air horns blasting after every big close, $2,000 suits soaked in sweat and adrenaline. Top performers were treated like royalty, bonus checks thrown across the room, luxury watches tossed like party favors. Miss quota, you were humiliated, publicly, then replaced, sometimes the same day. Fear and loyalty weren't side effects, they were policy. And then came the parties. Strippers in the conference room, champagne poured into fax machines, cocaine snorted off compliance manuals. Nothing was off limits, because nothing was sacred. Jordan preached one message over and over: winning is everything. And if you're not winning, you're nothing. People didn't just work for him, they believed in him. That's how fraud survives this long. It convinces people they're special. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people at Stratton Oakmont didn't feel like criminals, they felt like winners. And systems that reward results without questioning methods don't collapse, they metastasize. Jordan's personal life began mirroring the firm. Drug use wasn't indulgence anymore, it was maintenance. Quaaludes to slow down, cocaine to speed back up. Brokers passed out mid-call. One had a seizure on the sales floor. Fights broke out over commissions, women, or ego. In Jordan now, he was unraveling faster than anyone noticed. His marriage disintegrated. His home hid pills in couch cushions, syringes in bathrooms. One night, high out of his mind, he crashed his Ferrari into a concrete pillar with his 3-year-old daughter in the passenger seat. No charges, no pause, just momentum. Outside the office, the noise finally reached regulators. Investor complaints stacked up. Stocks bought at $7 collapsed to pennies.
Some companies Stratton pushed had no revenue, no product, sometimes no working phone number. The SEC noticed, so did journalists. Inside the firm, a few brokers began asking questions. Management's answer? Close the deal or leave. As scrutiny grew, hiding money became the real job. Millions were routed offshore through shell companies, accounts opened in relatives' names, funds parked in Geneva under companies that didn't exist. At one point, cash was smuggled using couriers, including a housekeeper with envelopes sewn into her clothing. Jordan called it asset protection. The FBI called it money laundering. If this part feels less like a movie and more like a warning sign, you're watching this channel for the right reason.
Then came June 1996. Against every warning, Jordan insisted on sailing his yacht, Naomi, through a Mediterranean storm. He was drunk, high, untouchable, or so he thought. The yacht capsized. Italian Navy helicopters pulled them from the water. The ship was destroyed. Jordan survived, but the illusion didn't. Because while Jordan was partying at sea, someone else was quietly building a case on land. And next, we meet the one person who didn't want his money, didn't want his fame, and wasn't impressed by the show. Subscribe to Capital Misfires, because I'll explain why Jordan Belfort didn't just fall, he was taken down. By late 1996, the phones were still ringing, the commissions were still flowing, but behind the scenes, the walls were closing in, and Jordan Belfort was running out of exits. Empires don't collapse when everyone knows they're fake. They collapse when one person stops playing along. For Jordan Belfort, that person wasn't a regulator, it wasn't a journalist, it was time, and one very patient FBI agent. By late 1996, Stratton Oakmont was glowing from the outside and decaying underneath. Complaints poured in. Former employees whispered. Phone records didn't match income. Real estate purchases made no mathematical sense. And quietly, the FBI started connecting dots. Leading the case was Gregory Coleman, Financial Crimes Division. He didn't chase headlines, he chased patterns. Cold call scripts, wire transfers, cashier's checks withdrawn in neat $50,000 chunks, casino runs, art purchases, offshore accounts tied to names that didn't exist. Jordan felt it before he saw it. The air was changing. What Jordan didn't know, at least at first, was that some of his own people had already flipped, not out of conscience, out of fear. One broker got caught in a separate scam. Another felt cheated on a bonus. A third just wanted a deal. They wore wires, recorded calls, handed over documents. Every conversation Jordan thought was loyalty became evidence. October 1996. Federal agents arrived just after sunrise. Phones ripped from desks, filing cabinets emptied, hard drives copied. One employee tried flushing documents. Another walked out carrying a briefcase full of shredded contracts. It didn't matter. The case was already built. Most people would stop there. Jordan didn't. In early 1997, while under investigation, he wired $2 million to Switzerland, explicitly not to move funds, recorded discussing it. That transfer wasn't just illegal, it was careless, and it became the thread that unraveled everything. This is where the myth cracks. Jordan didn't lose because he ran out of money. He lost because he never learned restraint. The same instinct that made him rich made him reckless. By 1998, the math was unavoidable. Wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, up to 30 years in prison. So Jordan did what he always did best. He sold. Not stocks, not dreams, information. He flipped, wore a wire, named names, handed over the people who once called him king. Over 30 employees were indicted. Some served more time than he did. Jordan? 22 months in a minimum security facility. No bars, no guns, tennis courts, weight rooms. That's where he met Tommy Chong, who told him to write everything down. And Jordan listened. In 2007, The Wolf of Wall Street was published. It wasn't an apology, it was a highlight reel.
Fraud is entertainment. Excess is charm. Hollywood loved it. In 2013, Scorsese and DiCaprio turned it into a blockbuster. Audiences laughed. Critics applauded. Jordan Belfort became a brand. The victims didn't get sequels. A teacher who lost her retirement, a veteran who invested his life savings, families who mortgaged their futures. The court ordered $110 million in restitution. Only a fraction was ever paid. The rest disappeared into trusts, loopholes, and time. This is why Capital Misfires exists, because systems don't fail by accident. They fail when incentives reward harm and punish restraint. Subscribe if you want stories like this, where success is questioned, not worshipped. Jordan once said, "I was guilty of being greedy, but so is everyone else." Maybe that's why he got away with it, because deep down, we didn't want him punished. We wanted to believe we'd do better in his place. When fraud becomes fame and consequences become content, the system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed, with our participation. I'm Jimmy. This is Capital Misfires, and now you know why Capital doesn't fail by accident. It fails by design.